The sun was already setting when he realized his frustrating mistake. The keys were still in the apartment. Approaching the door, he instinctively slipped his backpack off his shoulders and, with a habitual gesture, reached into its inner pocket. To his surprise and horror, it was empty. A faint hope flickered in his mind. What if the pocket tore and the keys fell out? But alas, the pocket was intact, and the keys were nowhere to be found, not in any of the backpack's numerous compartments, nor in his jacket pocket. Stepping back from the door in disappointment, he took off his hat and sat down on a step. Sitting outside your own apartment door, that's just ridiculous, as Mom would say, he thought. That's exactly how she reacted to particularly upsetting situations. He remembered yesterday's incident when she was given 100 rubles instead of 500 in change at the store. "No, this is just preposterous," Mom had said and gone into the bathroom to hide her tears. Money was always tight, and now this. He sat there, bracing himself. The only option was to walk to his mom's work to get the keys. Walk, not ride, despite the distance and the frost. In the morning, the thermometer had read -15 degrees. He didn't have enough pocket money for the bus. It was only 4 stops. Today, he had indulged in a luxury. He bought 2 apple pastries and an orange juice at the cafeteria. If I had only bought 1 pastry, I would have had enough for a ticket, he thought with annoyance. He had to go to his mom's work. He couldn't spend the night on the stairs. She was on duty today and wouldn't be home. Mom worked as a dispatcher for Rainbow Taxi on a 24-hour on, 48-hour off schedule. He imagined appearing at her office, and she, initially startled, then understanding what had happened, would start lecturing him. "I've told you 1,000 times, everything should be automatic. Grab the keys, put them in your pocket, leave the apartment, close the door. You're such a scatterbrain and an irresponsible person." He knew he was clumsy. If he were more organized, he would be calmly sitting in the kitchen right now, devouring meatballs with pasta and watching cartoons. He only noticed Vera Bereslavovna when she was right in front of him. He had been so lost in his somber thoughts that he hadn't heard her approaching footsteps. He looked at her, and she looked at him. They remained silent for a moment until Vera Bereslavovna broke the silence with a question. "Why are you sitting here?" And then she immediately guessed. "Your mom isn't home, and you forgot your keys. We have a self-locking door." The door closed and the keys stayed inside. He confirmed her assumption, and then, remembering his manners, added, "Hello? Hello?" She replied with a smile. Thus began a new chapter in his life. To himself, he called Vera Bereslavovna Verber for short. He simply combined the first 3 letters of her first name and patronymic. He borrowed this idea from the book The Republic of Shkid, where Viktor Nikolaevich Sorokin became Vikniksor, and Konstantin Alexandrovich Mednikov became Kastelmed. Verber and he lived on the same landing, door to door, on the very top, 5th floor. The building was old, but recently renovated. The walls were painted a pleasant cornflower blue. The railings gleamed with newness, and cleanliness reigned all around. The residents took turns cleaning the floors, and potted plants adorned the window sills on the stair landings. He and his mom had moved into this apartment after the death of his grandmother, her mother. The apartment had only 1 room, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom, and an enclosed balcony. After living in a dormitory where the toilet, shower, and kitchen were shared by 6 families, the new dwelling seemed luxurious. Mom slept on the sofa, and he slept in an armchair. It was a bit cramped to sleep in, like a box. Turning on his side, he would bury his nose in the burgundy fabric, which emitted a stuffy, sweet scent. All of his grandmother's belongings smelled that way. Mom said it was the smell of lonely old age, and that Grandma herself was to blame for it. He didn't know what his grandmother's fault was. He only remembered that she and his mom had a falling out and hadn't spoken for over 10 years. They only exchanged postcards for New Year's and birthdays. Mom took offense at his grandmother and moved north to the city of Novi Urengoy. There she met his father, got married, and gave birth to a son. But a year later they divorced, and his father left for another woman. When Mom was angry with him, she would shout, "Just like his dad, a good-for-nothing." He didn't remember his father, not even from photographs, because his mom had torn them up and thrown them away. She was probably even more offended by his father than by his grandmother, as she had, after all, kept his grandmother's pictures. As a child, he dreamed of them all living together, Mom, Dad, Grandma, and he constantly made this wish to dead Moroz, Father Frost, hoping it would come true. But then he learned that dead Moroz didn't exist and stopped waiting for a miracle. Last winter, they received a letter from Vera Bereslavovna, his grandmother's neighbor and friend. She informed them that his grandmother had died and left the apartment to his mom. Mom learned of his grandmother's death and that there was no one left to send postcards to. She was very upset and cried. "Why didn't we visit her sooner if you loved her so much?" he asked. "Because she was a difficult person," Mom replied, blinking rapidly to hold back tears. "Aunt Zena is difficult too, and fat. But we would have managed somehow," he shrugged. "You're still foolish. What difference does it make if she was fat or thin?" That's not the point. She was stubborn. She bossed everyone around, told them how to live. Well, maybe she knew what was best and showed others. "Showed?" Mom mimicked. "You don't understand much. And anyway, stop interfering in adult conversations." Mom quit her job, and they moved to Kazan. At first, Kolya missed his old school and his friends, but gradually, memories of them faded. He even stopped chatting with Yura online. What was the point? Try, for instance, to tell Yura how Galina Sergeevna confiscated Varlamov's phone, which he managed to use to watch videos right during class. And wouldn't you know it? The phone slipped from Galina Sergeevna's hands and crashed to the floor with a clatter, shattering the screen to pieces. But to describe that situation, he would have had to explain how obnoxious Varlamov was, and how the whole class adored Galina Sergeevna, who resembled a cartoon mermaid, just without a tail. Describing all that was too long, and the desire vanished. The phone incident gradually faded from memory. In short, they stopped communicating. Kolya liked everything about his new school, unlike his mom's job. What was so great about having to sleep alone so often? During the day, it's fine. You come home from school, do your homework, and watch TV or play on the computer. But at night, you're already quite grown up. Is it really that hard to heat up your own food in the microwave and wash your own dishes? Mom would reply when he complained about being lonely, as if she didn't understand that it wasn't about the food. Kolya even cried, which was, of course, embarrassing. After all, men don't cry and aren't afraid to sleep alone. Mom hugged him, pressed him so tightly that it felt like his ribs would crack, and said, "Son, you're so smart, already big and independent, you understand? I can't quit this job, there's no other, and we need the money." We're all alone, and no one will help us." She said this in a trembling voice on the verge of tears. Kolya realized that Mom herself was holding back tears. She was very sentimental generally. "All right, enough with the dramatics," Kolya said, and he liked how it sounded, solid and grown up. "I'll sleep alone. Just please don't cry." Once he promised, he had to keep his word. He didn't complain anymore and found a solution. He got used to sleeping with the light on. Before the day, Vera Bereslavovna found him sitting on the stairs. They had barely spoken, limiting themselves to greetings. That incident, fortunately, ended favorably. He didn't have to go to his mom's work. His neighbor called herself, explained the situation, and offered Kolya a place to stay for the night. "Don't worry, it's nothing serious." The next day, Mom hardly scolded him. Almost a year had passed since then. Kolya started visiting Vera Bereslavovna every day, and when Mom went on her 24-hour shifts, he would stay the night at her place. Together, around 9 in the evening, they would check if everything was turned off, lock the door, and go to Vera Bereslavovna's apartment. She had 2 rooms, and she would make up a bed for Kolya in the smaller one. At first, he brought his own bedding from home, but then they got tired of hauling pillowcases and duvet covers back and forth. So Kolya got his own set, as Vera Bereslavovna put it. Just like he already had his own cup, his favorite plate with the wolf and the hare from a cartoon, and a striped terry towel. At first, Kolya thought Vera Bereslavovna was strict and even mean. Tall, a head taller than his mom, with glasses on a chain, short gray hair, and a loud voice. She looked as if she knew everything about you, and she didn't like it much. But now Kolya was sure that Vera Bereslavovna was the best person in the world. After his mom, of course. But his mom always lacked time, work, and household chores. And Vera Bereslavovna, as she herself said, was in a blissful pensioner's state, meaning she had a lot of free time to dispose of as she pleased. She knew many stories and could answer any question. She cooked something tasty for Kolya, measured his reading speed, helped him make collages and draw. His art teacher would later show their joint works to the whole class and praise them. When Kolya told Vera Bereslavovna about it, she laughed, "I can be proud of myself. I've learned to draw and glue at a 3rd grade level. Dizzying prospects are opening up." Together they did Russian language exercises, rehearsed Kolya's performances in school plays, learned the difficult English alphabet, and solved complex math problems. Yes, Vera Bereslavovna sighed when he again couldn't figure out the trains that travel towards each other and just can't meet. A true humanities person is growing up. "Is that bad?" Kolya asked, wary. "It's like me." Vera Bereslavovna had taught foreign literature at a university for 40 years. She had so many books that they didn't fit on the shelves, and she had to store thick volumes in the upper shelves. "And you read all of them?" Kolya marveled. "Some of them more than once. And I envy you, my friend, because that pleasure is still ahead of you." At first, Kolya didn't much care for reading. Playing computer games was much more interesting, but wanting to please Vera Bereslavovna, he picked up the books she offered him and gradually got hooked. To his surprise, it turned out that there were not only cartoons and movies about Carlson, Pippi Longstocking, and Mary Poppins, but also books. He devoured the adventures of Ellie and Annie Smith, Vitya Maliv, the Moomins, Muffin, Half-Shoe, and Mossbeard. And Vera Bereslavovna pondered when she could introduce the clever and sensitive boy to serious literature. Vera Bereslavovna's apartment was filled with an atmosphere of memories, captured in numerous photographs. Images of her parents in amusing, old-fashioned outfits adorned the walls, as did a portrait of her sister, Valentina, with whom she had shared a home and whom she had outlived. Vera Bereslavovna herself appeared in the pictures at different stages of her life, from a slender, radiant girl to a graceful young woman with a magnificent braid, and then an elegant woman with a sophisticated hairstyle. In one photograph, a young man in a formal suit was captured beside Vera Bereslavovna, her husband, Pavel Alexeyevich. Their joint image could also be seen in another photograph, where an adorable little girl sat between them. However, neither the girl nor Pavel Alexeyevich were seen anywhere else. Kolya knew that the girl had never grown up, and the man had not grown old. Tanechka and Pasha died, Vera Bereslavovna said in a trembling voice, and Kolya understood that this topic was closed for her. With the onset of summer, Vera Bereslavovna took the boy to her dacha. "My plot," she would say, "is the size of a handkerchief, so everything here is miniature. The little house with a cozy veranda, the neat garden beds, and the greenhouse where juicy, plump tomatoes ripen." Kolya had never tasted such wonderfully fragrant and sweet tomatoes before, and had no idea they could grow to such impressive sizes. Kolya gladly helped care for the garden, frolicked in the river, feasted on berries, and accompanied Vera Bereslavovna on her mushroom foraging trips into the forest. In reality, they didn't aim to find mushrooms, as Vera Bereslavovna had no fondness for them whatsoever and couldn't distinguish edible from poisonous. Instead, they ventured deep into the forest thickets, each time discovering something unusual, a whimsical stump here, a picturesque little lake there, and engaged in endless conversations on a variety of topics. They spent whole weeks at the dacha, only occasionally visiting his mom at home. From time to time, Mom herself would come, bringing treats and expressing immense gratitude to Vera Bereslavovna. One day, early in the summer, Kolya inadvertently overheard a conversation between his mom and Vera Bereslavovna. "Please take the money. You shouldn't be spending on Kolya," Mom said. "Oh, it's no special expense. What I buy for myself, I buy for him. Besides, I grow everything in my garden. Vera Bereslavovna, I recently took on extra work. Don't worry, I have money." Mom was constantly looking for extra work, filling in for dispatchers who were sick or on vacation. "Stop, Anna. I won't take anything from you. Kolya will need to be ready for school by September." "How much will he need?" "Save it. You'll have something to buy things with." "Thank you for everything. I don't know what we would do without you." Mom's voice trembled, and Kolya felt she was about to cry. Vera Bereslavovna, apparently noticing this too, quickly changed the subject and sent Mom to water the garden. At the end of August, Kolya turned 10. Mom gave him rollerblades and a huge building set, and Vera Bereslavovna presented him with a cell phone, cooler than Varlamov's. Kolya shouted with delight, and Mom bit her lip and said they couldn't accept such an expensive gift from a stranger. "Yes," Vera Bereslavovna finished for Mom. "No, of course, you're not a stranger to us at all," Mom hastily objected. "It's just that you already do so much for Kolya and me that it's just awkward." Consider it, from Grandma Ira to Kolya. She, may she rest in peace, bought her grandson a birthday present every year, but she never dared to send it. She went to stores, spent a long time choosing toys, then kept them in the closet, constantly took them out, examined them, stroked them, and then took them to the nearest kindergarten before New Year's. Only the very first time, when he was 1 year old, she sent gifts to you in the north, but the package was returned. Vera Bereslavovna, Mom and I, well, you understand. I never judge or discuss anyone, she cut in. Maybe we could at least give you part of the sum, Mom timidly suggested. Just try it, Vera Bereslavovna replied seriously. The main thing, this thing, is that the child is happy, concluded Uncle Valera, whom Mom had recently introduced to Kolya. Uncle Valera was Mom's friend. He also worked as a taxi driver for Rainbow. Everything about him was broad, his face, shoulders, palms, back, and his head was like an orange, round, bald, and bumpy. Kolya called him Uncle Valera aloud, as Mom instructed, but to himself he called him this thing. Uncle Valera couldn't speak without these two words. Did you, this thing, do all your homework? Sergei, this thing, got his car dinged. Mom and Uncle Valera's friendship wasn't like Kolya's with Sanyak from the third entrance or Yura from Urengoy. At first, this thing would visit them in the evenings with flowers for Mom and pastries for Kolya. Or he would pick Mom up and they would go somewhere together. Mom would intricately style her hair, spend a long time putting on makeup, put on her dressy dresses and high heels, twirl in front of the mirror, and pester Kolya with questions. How do I look? Not too fat? Kolya thought no one in the world was more beautiful than his mom, and never could be. He told her so, and she would wave her hand and giggle like a girl. After 2 months of this kind of friendship, Uncle Valera came and stayed for good. Does he have nowhere to live? Kolya wondered. Son, you see, well, you understand. Kolya waited for her to continue. Mom blushed slightly and went on. Uncle Valera and I want to be together. I like him. And he likes me too. Do you need a father? Why do we need him? We lived perfectly fine without any father, came the question, full of bewilderment. Exactly. Without any. Your father, it seems, is enjoying his life, never once checking in on us. And for me, you know, it's not easy raising a son alone, his mother replied. Am I a burden to you? Kolya asked, hurt. I help around the house, I wash dishes, make my bed, go to the store. The conversation dragged on. His mother alternately chided Kolya for not understanding and showered him with kisses. Finally weary, she said, That's it, Kolya. The decision is made. Uncle Valera and I are adults and know what's best. He's a good man. You'll get used to him, you'll see. Maybe you'll even want to call him Dad. But Kolya had no such desire. What kind of dad was he? Just a guy. When Mom cooked, he was constantly by her side in the kitchen, talking about cars, roads, and traffic police officers. Why is she so happy that he's with us now? Was she unhappy living with me? Why did she even need him? Kolya asked Vera Bereslavovna, as they prepared Charlotte together. Kolya diligently stirred the batter in a large bowl, while Vera Bereslavovna sliced apples. Picking up another apple, she said, You see, dear, people are wired to need various things at the same time. You need food, but water is also essential. You can't say, Here are your shoes, so you'll do without a shirt. But a person isn't just a shirt, Kolya objected. True, but the principle is the same. Put that candy back. Soup will be ready soon. You'll spoil your appetite. You are your mom's son. She loves you more than anything in the world. That's constant. But she also needs someone to help, to support, to take on some of her worries. And someone to be there when you grow up, perhaps want to move to another city, get married, start your own family, have children. She paused. Remember, you need to give your heart to someone to feel truly alive. Vera Bereslavovna gazed intently at Kolya and suddenly said, "Thank you." "For what?" he asked, surprised. She sometimes said strange things. "For being covered in flour from head to toe," Vera Bereslavovna replied sternly, even frowning. But Kolya noticed a smile in her eyes. "Go to the bathroom immediately and clean yourself up." "But I still won't call him Dad," he shouted from the bathroom. "You have that right. That title must be earned." Truth be told, Uncle Valera wasn't a bad person. He didn't fuss, didn't swear, didn't shout, didn't ask silly questions about grades, drank rarely, and when tipsy, was quiet and calm. He brought sweets and fruits almost every evening. He called Mom Anya, kissed her cheek, and helped around the house. She transformed. She became lighthearted, smiling, constantly humming something, laughing, tousling, and kissing Kolya. Uncle Valera worked hard and apparently earned well. Soon, a new washing machine and TV appeared in the apartment. He fixed the faucet, the outlet, renovated the bathroom, bought Mom a sheepskin coat, and Kolya a winter jacket with a hood. When Kolya inquired about his past life, Uncle Valera described his situation in detail. He had lived with his wife in some provincial town, working as a driver. Then they separated, like Mom and Dad, but they had no children. He moved to Kazan, rented an apartment, worked, and suffered, thinking all women were the same. And then he met Kolya's mom, who was unlike anyone else. "We're this thing getting married, Kolya," Uncle Valera concluded his story. "Get married," Kolya agreed. "Well, too late now." In mid-November, Mom and Uncle Valera got married. They signed the papers and had a celebratory dinner at home in a small circle, as Mom put it. Besides the newlyweds and Kolya, only Vera Bereslavovna was at the table. Mom and Vera Bereslavovna were in beautiful dresses, with hairstyles from the salon. Uncle Valera and Kolya suffered in suits and ties. Kolya remembered his long-held New Year's wish and thought it had almost come true. Only instead of Uncle Valera, Dad should have been sitting at the table. Despite all his mom's words, Kolya still thought he was good and sometimes mentally talked to him. In these conversations, Dad was exactly like Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean. Jolly, resourceful, mischievous, brave, and a little crazy. While they were having tea and cake, Mom timidly glanced at Vera Bereslavovna, quietly took a breath, set her cup aside, and made up her mind. "Verochka Bereslavovna, I'm sorry, we would like to..." She fell silent and looked at her newlywed husband. "Of course, Kolya will stay the night with me," Vera Bereslavovna said. "Your apologies are unnecessary. Or did you want to ask for something else?" Mom sighed again, looked at Uncle Valera again, who was in no hurry to help, and blurted out, "We were given a short vacation at work, only a week, and we'd like to go to a health resort for 5 days." "Excellent conditions," Uncle Valera finally chimed in. 4 meals a day, a pool, a movie theater, a salt therapy room, beneficial treatments. "Go, of course," Vera Bereslavovna approved. "You, Anya, haven't been on vacation once since you moved to Kazan. I'll look after the apartment, don't worry." "Cool," Kolya exclaimed, and then asked, "What about school?" He asked, and then froze, fearing to hear. "That's right. We didn't think about that. Then we'll have to cancel the trip." Mom, blushing, cast a guilty glance at Kolya. "Son, Uncle Valera and I planned a short trip together and wanted to ask Vera Bereslavovna to look after you. It's kind of like A honeymoon, Uncle Valera added. Vera Bereslavovna, Mom pleaded. Could you? If not, then we won't go anywhere. Why couldn't I? I'd be happy to stay with Kolya, if he doesn't mind. Kolya desperately wanted to shout, "Traitor! As soon as you got this thing, you're rushing off to a health resort with him. What about me?" He even opened his mouth. But then, looking at his mom, he saw her, blushing, embarrassed, and frightened, yet happy face. He looked at Uncle Valera, who gently stroked her hand, as if reassuring her. And suddenly he realized that Mom had probably also made a wish to dead Miraz, dreaming of a man who would love her and take care of her and Kolya. Kind, simple, honest. And even if he wasn't at all like the dashing pirate Jack Sparrow. And dead Miraz, in whom no one really believed, had somehow fulfilled her cherished wish. Would he, Kolya, really ruin everything? "All right, go," he said. "I'll wait for you." "Son, you're not upset?" Mom asked. "What else? Am I a child to be offended?" "You'll be without me, without us for a bit," she corrected herself. Kolya nodded silently. "What a wonderful son you've raised, Anna," Vera Bereslavovna remarked, observing Kolya's expression carefully. "But since you'll be resting, we'll allow ourselves to relax a bit too, take a vacation, and explore the city." "Awesome!" Kolya fidgeted in his chair. He was ready to go anywhere with Vera Bereslavovna. "And if you also excuse me from classes, Mom, then where will we go?" "I will," Mom laughed, and together they began discussing which places to visit and what to see. Time flew by quickly. Tomorrow was Saturday. Mom and Uncle Valera were due back from the health resort in the morning. Before leaving, Mom had spoken with Galina Sergeyevna, who had allowed the boy to miss classes. He and Vera Bereslavovna had walked around the city center, admired architectural masterpieces, monuments and fountains, visited the National Museum, and gone to theaters and the ice rink. It was wonderful and fun, but Kolya still missed his mom terribly, and imagined sharing his impressions of what he had seen and learned during those days with her. They, of course, called each other regularly and exchanged photos, but to snuggle up to his mom, to feel her familiar scent, to rub his nose against hers, as they often did, that was something entirely different. Today, Kolya was at school, and Vera Bereslavovna had embarked on a thorough cleaning of both apartments. In addition, she was going to prepare dough to bake pies for tomorrow. After classes, he raced home at full speed, having received 3 A's, eager to share his successes with Vera Bereslavovna. Kolya saw her from afar. She noticed him too, standing on the corner of their building by the road, smiling and waiting for him to approach. Vera Bereslavovna was probably returning from the store. She had 2 bags in her hands. He ran across the empty road. Traffic here was never heavy, especially in the middle of the day. Nevertheless, Kolya habitually looked both ways. "Hi, are you coming from the store? Can I help carry anything?" "Hello, my dear. Yes, I bought a few things. Help me and I'll take your shoe bag." They began passing the bags to each other. "Why are you so beaming?" "I got a bunch of A's," Kolya proudly declared, anticipating an enthusiastic reaction and questions. "And in what subjects? For what? My, how—" Vera Bereslavovna began, but suddenly her face contorted. She was looking somewhere behind Kolya, and her eyes behind her glasses grew wide. Her mouth fell open, and her face strangely crinkled. "Ah, ah, ah!" she screamed. He had never heard her scream before, and was taken aback by surprise. For some reason, Vera Bereslavovna sharply pulled him towards her, and then pushed him aside with all her might. She pushed him with such force that he lost his footing and fell onto his back. The bag slipped from his hands, and a loaf of bread fell out. Mandarins scattered across the ground, and a bottle of milk rolled away. In the spot where Kolya had just been standing, a black foreign car with a predatory grin screeched to a halt. Vera Bereslavovna lay nearby. The driver was so drunk that he couldn't even get out of the car. He remained motionless until the police arrived, despite passers-by attempting to pull him out, threatening to deal with him on the spot. Kolya jumped to his feet and rushed to Vera Bereslavovna. Bear," he mumbled, choking with tears and terror as he knelt beside her. Bear." He tried to call Vera Bereslavovna, but he couldn't properly pronounce her long name. A crowd quickly gathered around them. People talked, shouted, called someone, swore, and cars approached and stopped. Someone was crying, but Kolya heard and understood nothing. He crawled senselessly near Vera Bereslavovna, trying to say her name, but his tongue wouldn't obey him. An ambulance and the police pulled up with a roar. Doctors and police officers pushed their way through the crowd to Vera Bereslavovna and Kolya. The child wasn't hurt. She managed to push him away, a woman said in a trembling voice. I saw everything. They were standing, talking, and that drunkard. The people around grew noisy, started wailing. Grandma! Kolya suddenly cried out. Grandma, it's me, Kolya, do you hear? My dear Grandma, wake up! And she woke up, opened her eyes, looked at him, and whispered, There, I earned it. Sometimes she said things he didn't understand. But this time Kolya understood everything and smiled, though tears streamed down his cheeks. Now he was sure she would definitely recover. Mom and Uncle Valera burst into the hospital like a whirlwind, an hour after Vera Bereslavovna and Kolya were admitted. The woman was immediately taken away, and the boy, whom the doctors managed to separate from the injured woman for examination, was left alone in the hospital corridor. Finding no injuries, the medics asked him to wait for his parents. When his tearful mother and Uncle Valera appeared in the corridor, he was sitting on a leather sofa next to a tall planter with an artificial palm tree. His mother, barely suppressing her sobs, convulsively hugged Kolya, as if he had just desperately clung to Vera Bereslavovna. She pressed him close, and through her tears, apologized for leaving him alone, as if her presence at work and not at the health resort could have prevented what happened. Kolya comforted her, insisting that it was all over, that he was alive and well, and that Vera Bereslavovna would soon be fine too. Mom calmed down a bit, stopped crying, and asked him to recount what had happened. Kolya began his story, recalling Vera Bereslavovna's scream, her motionless body, and the terror that gripped him at the thought that she had died. And again he couldn't hold back his tears. Now it was his mother's turn to comfort him, assuring him that everything would be all right, and Vera Bereslavovna would soon return home. Thus, taking turns, they alternately cried, pleaded, and comforted each other until Uncle Valera returned with news. It turned out that while they were indulging in bitter tears, he had tracked down a doctor and learned that Vera Bereslavovna had bruises, a concussion, and a broken left leg. According to the doctor, she got off lightly. Mom and Kolya nearly cried again, but this time from relief and joy. I'm such a fool, sitting here crying, and I didn't even think to go to the doctor. Thank you for thinking of it right away, Mom said gratefully. Uncle Valera continued to act just as calmly and efficiently, doing exactly what was needed at the moment without unnecessary questions. He ironed laundry, cooked food, portioned it into containers, and delivered it to the hospital, driving around pharmacies in search of necessary medications. When Vera Berislavovna was allowed to get up, it turned out she couldn't manage crutches. So Uncle Valera brought a wheelchair from somewhere. One evening, shortly after the accident, Kolya was home alone. His mother was on duty at the hospital, and Uncle Valera was at work. Turning off the television, he went to the bathroom to brush his teeth before bed. Suddenly, he remembered that a literary quiz was scheduled for tomorrow, and he was tasked with making a daisy with a yellow circle in the center and questions on the petals. Kolya had completely forgotten about both the quiz and the daisy, and now he frantically rushed around the apartment in search of paper, scissors, and glue. "It's okay, I'll make it," he reassured himself. "Good thing I remembered, otherwise I'd get an F and let the whole class down." An hour and a half later, the daisy was almost ready. The petals turned out slightly different sizes, and the lines with questions were uneven, but overall Kolya was satisfied with the result. All that remained was to color the center yellow, and he could breathe a sigh of relief. But the worst happened when the work was almost finished. Kolya accidentally knocked over a jar of water, which tipped over and soaked the ill-fated flower. It was a real disaster. The daisy was hopelessly ruined. It was impossible to dry it. There was no more paper. He had used it all on the petals. It was almost 11 at night, and all the stores were closed. Just as Kolya decided that life was over, a key rattled in the lock. Uncle Valera assessed the scale of the tragedy, asked the distraught boy a few questions, then left again and didn't return for a long time. When he came back, he placed a thick stack of colored cardboard on the table. "There was no white paper this thing," Uncle Valera explained. "Well, don't be upset. We'll make a flower of 7 colors. At least you won't have to color it." He still interjected his absurd catchphrase at appropriate and inappropriate times. But Kolya no longer wanted to call him this thing, not even in his thoughts. They began working together. Kolya kept nodding off, and Uncle Valera sent him to bed. Waking up in the morning, the boy found that Uncle Valera had already left. On the table lay a beautiful flower with even, neatly written questions on bright petals. Vera Berislavovna was discharged a week before New Year's. For her return home, Mom and Kolya had decorated a large artificial Christmas tree, fluffy and very much like a real one. Multicolored garlands were hung throughout the rooms, and snowflakes and stars were pasted on the windows. Kolya and Uncle Valera bought the decorations and the tree at a huge supermarket. A plump, elderly cashier asked, "Why do you have everything in duplicate?" "Well, this thing we need to decorate 2 apartments, ours and Grandma's," Kolya replied. "Dead Moroz will put presents under both trees." The cashier smiled, and dimples appeared on her cheeks. "There's no dead Moroz," Kolya replied sternly. But as he said it, he thought, maybe he does exist after all, because someone fulfilled his most important